But of course, in studio, I have Dr. Wandia Njoya, who's a senior lecturer and head of Department Languages and Performing Arts at Daystar University, as well as Dr. Andrew Rieti, a senior lecturer of economics of education at the University of Nairobi. Welcome to the show. And of course, I wish we could go on because it was pretty heated about the CBC, but there's also another issue that we have to focus on: reforms in the university. Before we get into all the details, I would like to know from your view, I'll start with you, Dr. Wandia, what do you feel is necessitating these reforms from your opinionated view, being in academia?
The government is broke.
Goodness.
I think that's
is it that simple?
Yeah, it's just that simple.
Yeah?
And they don't know how to balance the budget. And they look at the higher education sector and they think this is a lot of money to be spending. So they want to reduce the amount of money. Isn't that a dangerous
precedent or something to set off reforms?
Yes, it is. Actually, you should not be reforming education from the balance sheet. You should be reforming it from what is happening in the sector, what has led us to where we are, etc.
Absolutely.
Because some of these costs that they are complaining about were because of policies that happened when people like Magoha was VCs. So that's what they need to rectify. But just looking at the budget and saying, oh, there's too much money going to universities, let's cut it off. Yeah. That's not the way to fix education.
Yeah, and of course this is going to have a ripple effect because you're having them being merged, you're having the possibility of having university staff being sacked. We had a headline that told us that there's tension at the University of Nairobi because at least 40 staff are going to be laid off, or more than that, or this was to do with the courses that were being changed. Yeah,
and then misleading information.
Yes, out there. But of course, the 40 courses were going to be scrapped off, and of course, the sacking is started to be happening across board. Now, what do you feel is necessitating these reforms, Doctor?
I think partly inadequate funding.
Yeah.
All right, of these institutions, and there are very many.
Yes.
There are quite many public universities. There are over 30 public universities and several university colleges.
Yes.
And secondly, and related to the first point of inadequate funding, it's the making of the government. That the government allowed through parliament, through whatever systems,
policies,
to initiate or to create very many institutions,
yes.
So that the university education subsector went through or has gone through an uncontrolled expansion.
Yes.
So now we are at a point when we have very many universities, all right, competing for relatively few students, all right, and because those students who are admitted through regular program by COOPs have to be supported by government,
right,
wherever they go, whether private universities or public universities. The funding, naturally, we can't blame the government.
Yes. And we're told that universities are in debt.
Yeah,
so we're not even talking about less money. Yeah.
It is an appropriate thing to do to step back and see what can we do with the mess that the government has created. So and I think that's what I can say.
And that story, the whole point of job losses, how are we going to deal with this? Because this is going to create a lot of tension, as the headlines have reflected over the past few days in many universities. You work in academia, and you know what this means for a lot of people who depend on universities just to make a living.
Well, partly, I can answer, that question. I don't have a lot of, statistics to cite, but I know a number of universities, especially public universities in Kenya, have a huge number of non-academic members of staff.
Yes.
In fact, some of the universities have been accused of being in an employment bureau, where the professors are fewer and they are underpaid. By the way, I keep telling my students that the reason why the fee paid by university students is low is because I am underpaid. So I'm kind of, how do you call it, ensuring that the fee paid. I'm not saying that the fee for undergraduate and other programs should be increased, but we are part of the reason why
it's low.
It's fairly low and affordable. So what I'm saying is, I think we need to reflect. There's a misconception that has been created by perhaps media.
Oh my goodness,
in our
today
minds,
the media is on trial.
And in our minds, that universities are going to be closed down. I'm not talking on behalf of Professor Magoha. I'm talking about what I understand when I listen to him. All right? He says they are going to reorganize these universities.
And merge.
Many of these universities are doing the same courses. They are duplicating, right? So, and then they are demanding funding, or they expect funding to do the same. And then when you look at it, at the number of students they are attracting, the numbers are not economical. So I think my understanding is they want to rationalize these universities and perhaps do what India has done over the years, that there are about 3,000 to 4,000 institutions of higher learning that are referred to as university deemed institutions. They are not
really
called universities. An example are those top-notch IIT, Indian Institutes of Technology. They are managed by...
And we are going to get deeper into that. But I also want to get Dr. Wandia's take on the sacking of staff. Do you feel it's necessary? And of course, we have to be humane, because these are people who are depending on the universities for a living. But it's just unsustainable with all the debt and the budgetary constraints.
I think first we need to know what kind of staff we are talking about. Is it the teaching staff or the administrative staff? Retrenchment is not very good, and usually it doesn't solve problems. So I don't know. I'm not. I'm not committed either way, because I don't want people to lose their jobs. But the thing is, this problem was started by the government. And then on top of that, when universities were told to raise their own funds, the universities marketized. And so they started employing marketing people, PR, many more accountants and auditors, so that to take care of more students. So as it's what we call academic bloat, that there are more administrative staff nowadays than professors. But I also want to say that the Ministry of Education also needs to do its own audit, because they have so many regulatory bodies. So many of the professors are out there in regulatory bodies instead of in the classroom.
In the universities,
and those regulatory bodies require a lot of money. And sometimes even for some programs, universities have to pay twice. And paying twice to be accredited also means that these accreditors come to your university. So a professor who should be in class is busy taking people on a tour of the university to show that we are capable of handling these classes. So even the government really needs to look at itself on how it's spending its own money. For example, they have a Commission of University Education, but they also have somebody at Jogoo House in charge of university education. Why are they duplicating these roles? So we need or they have, for example, Kenya School of Law and the Council for Legal Education. So they need to look at all these bodies and see where are they duplicating, reduce it, and then reduce the amount of money universities are spending on meeting regulation, on buying completely expensive equipment that is not necessary, but they have to buy for the sake of pleasing the regulators. And then those regulators can they come back and join us in the classroom?
In the classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, also
Karibisha.
and academia does need these people, knowledgeable individuals to impart their knowledge. That is a bit obvious. I mean, if I'm surprised they're actually not in the classrooms, because this is what we need. And when we look at our neighbors, we look at South Africa, the approach to education is quite different, and the value that is placed on you being a doctor is quite high. Is it the same, and are we aspiring to that level of education as the youth, as young people, as people in academia? Do you feel that there's a disconnect, or are we still not too enthusiastic as being a PhD holder or something of the sort?
I think, I'm sorry to say that it's us the PhD holders, who have given Kenyans the wrong impression. We have made Kenyans think that PhD is about big jobs, becoming professors, joining commissions, becoming CSAs and the like.
Yes.
But to be a PhD holder is a responsibility. It is to take care of knowledge and teaching for society, not just our students.
Right.
And because we don't do that in Kenya, because PhD doctor is seen as sort of like
elitist?
A prestige item.
Yes.
People get the impression that now to go to university is about prestige. South Africa has come from a very difficult history.
Yes.
And so especially the Africans appreciate the importance of knowledge and education. And that's why they value it. We don't value education, we value money. So maybe if we divorced education from jobs, which is what I've been saying, then people can look for jobs how they want.
Yes.
And then those who want to learn, those who want knowledge, those who see the value of education, they can come to school to learn because they want to learn, and not because they want to be prestigious and look good and get good jobs.
Right. Now, you have pointed out as the reduced government funding. How are you taking this as an option by the government? You said it's actually quite negative because universities are the last place you need to be reducing their funds. But do you think it would go down well to handle the duplications that are in the ministry? Because the focus is now on the universities. Let's do away with the support stuff and the unnecessary. But once we start looking at wading into those waters, do you think it's going to go down well?
I think it will. It might not go down well, but I wish the ministry would come and talk to us lecturers. We can tell them where to reduce the money. We can see where the money is going, and we can help them. Because even when universities were expanding, the lecturers in senates would say this is not a good idea. But we were not listened to because people wanted to look like CEOs, they wanted to be prestigious. So it's a whole national culture that we have of glorifying status and power and money, and so that has now infiltrated the universities. We also caught the bug.
Yes.
So but they should ask us. I can tell them many ways in which we can reduce the expenditure of education, so that we give students a fairly decent education, not MIT standards, of course, because we can't afford that kind of equipment, but a fairly decent education that can make them creative enough to be able to adjust to whatever context.
Dr. Riech, do you agree that there are loopholes and duplications through which the funding is actually hemorrhaging out of the system, and if we block them, as she said, then we can actually have enough funding for our universities?
Two things. One, I agree the resource utilization in Kenya is not efficient, or is not efficiently done. Corruption takes a huge amount of resources.
Right.
We are not talking about it here. It's in the public media. I mean, it's in public domain. Kenyans know.
We know what
from
happens.
Counties to the central government, and even institutions, and worst of all, institutions of education. Right. There's a bit of inefficient use of resources. So that said, we also need to understand the subject of our discussion here, that we have many institutions that are doing the same things. All right? And if nothing is done to reorganize them so that we could have some institutions specializing
yeah.
in some programs
Yes.
to avoid duplication,
Yes.
then we are not headed anywhere, because these institutions of higher learning, much as I disagree with my colleague that education should not be linked with the labor market. I don't know what kind of economics is that, because universities and education institutions are involved in generation of what is called human capital.
Okay.
Human capital are the skills and the knowledge
That you
acquired
need, yeah.
by people, all right, to be able to be effective in life,
Yes.
in work, and create things.
But the value upon which we put our PhD holders is what she was talking about, because she says that because we see it as a means to an end, to becoming elitist, then we lose sight of the value of education. I don't know if you get my drift, because once we put it, we want to learn because we want to know more rather than because we want to get that particular position, then that's where the rift or the change comes in. Don't you agree?
I quite agree,
Yeah.
and the problem is the fact that the regulatory body,
Yes.
namely the Commission for University Education, in the past has not been very effective in checking what happens there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, apart from the Commission for University Education and Higher Education Loans Board and the COOPS, the three which are working closely, I don't know which other regulatory, unless she's talking about professional institutions,
Yes.
or bodies,
Yeah.
the body for engineers,
Yeah.
for medical and practitioners, which are important, because pharmacists are trained
Right.
in the universities.
Yes, this is true.
Engineers are trained by universities. So before they can join the labor market
Right.
and be registered as engineers, as medical practitioners, the universities have to ensure that they do things right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how these many institutions
Yeah.
are duplicating the role
Yes.
of the Ministry of Education that has a directorate for university education. How can, the Commission for University Education, Higher Education Loans Board, COOPS,
Yeah.
are regulated, they are monitored, they are directed by that directorate of university education.
Yeah.
So it's not a duplication, excuse me.
Okay,
Yeah.
you have already
Yeah.
voiced your opinion on that, so I'm going to not going to belabor that point.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that is necessitating the reforms is the declining number of students, and this has to be to do with reforms that actually ensure that cheating is clamped down on, and of course now there's less cheating. Even that story that we took a look at earlier on, telling us that Mogoha is warning that those who compromise selection exercise will be punished, as well as other orders in terms of taking care of the test papers and ensuring that they're opened in the presence of the people in the schools, has to do with just reducing the amount of cheating, and therefore this has means that there's going to be less enrollment, and we have seen it over the past few cycles. Now, what do you feel about that reducing number and how it necessitates reforms? I'll start with you, Dr. Wandia.
Again.
You are jaded about this ministry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, exam cheating, again, the research says. And you know,
Yes.
these people keep telling us to do the research, and when they do it, they don't want to hear what we have to say.
Okay.
The research says that education cheating in exams is not a function of the curriculum, and it's not a function of the education system.
Yes.
It's a function of the economy.
Okay.
When economic opportunities are fewer, when the opportunities for advancement in the education system are fewer, then people become desperate to
Yes.
cheat. So as long as that is the case in Kenya, we are not going to stop exam cheating.
Right.
And this is replicated, I'm talking about research from France, from India, from US.
Yes.
In fact, like the US, it's when they increased regulation, this regulation I'm complaining talking about,
Yeah.
that exam cheating shot through the
yes.
roof. So we need to stop looking at teachers and kids
Yeah.
as the source of our problems. We, the educated, the PhD holders, Kizungu Mingi people, have not been able to solve major sociological and economic challenges.
Right.
We are payukering about assassination plots, sijui kieleweke and
Yes,
tanga
tanga.
tanga, instead of dealing with what does our country need.
Absolutely.
And so, because we have become so incompetent,
Right.
we are now focusing on the teachers and the students.
Yes.
And the teachers and the students are getting more and more desperate to do whatever they can
Yes.
do. So we need to open up the system, open up opportunities of learning, tell these employers who are insulting us in the universities,
Yeah.
we tell them to train their own workers since they think they can do a better job than
Right.
us.
Right.
Open up the system, have different ways of training people. You can have, and then even have different exams, not just end of school exams, but have entry level exams. So, for example, if you want to join medicine, you do a medical school entry exam, and if you don't do well, you
Then
can come
that's
back again and do it
Yeah,
again
yeah.
until you are able to enter. So if we diversify all these opportunities, we are not going to have the desperation of children and teachers to cheat.
You brought up an angle that I rarely hear about, because actually this is the first time I'm looking at it from that view, because when you take a look at it, we have vilified cheating, and these people are evil, they're doing this and doing that, and they're hiding little what we call mwakenyas in their booklets. But then at the end of the day, you're trying to give your kid an edge in the market. You're trying to help them survive better. So if you look at it from that angle, it's actually, if the economics were right, then we wouldn't feel the need to push the students, to actually let them take their time and learn what they need to learn, because it will aid them in the job market. Do you agree with this?
I think cheating in exams, which is being addressed, it was initiated by Dr. Fred Matiang'i when
yes.
he was CS for Education.
Yes.
That was timely. Is a societal problem, all right, where people are looking for shortcuts to get what they want.
Yes.
Where some parents, not all parents,
Some, yeah.
would want to ensure that their kids, their children go and do medicine or engineering or whatever it is, some of these lucrative academic programs.
Yes.
And so they collude with the school administrators and brokers. This has been, is known.
Yes.
It was revealed recently or in the recent past. So that students take a shortcut, you know, to land into courses they never would have qualified for.
Yeah.
So I think the bottom line is the social demand for degrees in this country is too high that you have to have a degree.
Yes.
When in countries that have developed, like Germany, it's estimated that only about a third of school leavers directly join universities.
Yeah.
The rest join mid-level colleges, technical institutes
Community
for
colleges.
training.
Yeah.
And those who want to go to university later on do so not to do a full degree program, but to acquire some certification
Yes.
in areas where universities or some institutions of higher learning have expertise to help them improve on what they have learned.
Skills. Yeah.
Right? So it's only the madness in Kenya that we have kids, you know, even as low as class 5.
Right.
Unamuuliza when you grow up, and I keep asking someone, what would you want to be? I would want to be a pilot.
A neurosurgeon.
I would want to be there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the making of the society.
Right.
When we need to have the bulk of learners completing primary and secondary education, joining mid-level colleges. Kenya has an acute shortage of skilled technicians.
Yes.
Getting a qualified plumber is very difficult in this country.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
few who are there, they are overworked, and then now we have quacks.
Yes.
Now, the problem again is historically, there are negative attitudes towards those
Certain
vocational
jobs,
training,
yes.
programs, because it's held that only those who have failed
We'll do the
to go
plumbing
to the
course.
hallmark institutions, universities,
Yeah.
are the ones those who have failed. So that's why research data
Yeah.
indicate that enrollments in some of government youth polytechnics,
Are going
which are
down.
very many, and the government is equipping them, are very low. So the poor negative attitude. So,
Yes. So where do we start in terms of changing this? Because you can train to be, and you're the second person who's giving that same analogy, the same example to do with a plumber being considered a very dirty job, and of course nobody is training to do it, and everybody is running around quacks, and we have all these leakages in the city and in our homes. Now, at the same time, we need to change perspectives. So where would we start in changing these perspectives? Because you can be a plumber, have your own business established, hire other plumbers. It could be actually an actual venture, but then you're not doing it. So where do you start?
I think we need to make known what are the expectations of different skilled manpower.
Yeah.
What is it that they go through? What are the opportunities of them getting adequately compensated?
Yes.
All right. And we need to unpack information regarding how many numbers of those qualified technicians we have. The few who are qualified in Kenya are even finding jobs outside the country.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
it's known, but that information is not unpacked to the villagers, the
Yes.
secondary school leavers, the primary school leavers, who are many. And cumulatively over the years, we have a huge number of Kenyan youth who are not trained.
Yes.
They are not working. Many of them are doing manual jobs, including riding on pikipikis and so on. So we need to have a campaign, and I'm sure there are
Right.
strategies
Yes.
of changing the perception about vocational training.
That's quite true.
That's where many of them should go. So there will be no shortage of numbers of people joining universities,
Right.
if the bulk of them actually go into vocational training.
Yes, vocational training.
Yeah.
And I do agree that we need to change perspective, because you can imagine today telling your village mates that I'm going to Nairobi to train as a plumber. It's not going to be taken very positively. Actually, you might be looked down upon, even though you are the one going to get better. Dr. Wandia, the other issue is political pressure. We have been told the political pressure is pushing the reforms, and this is what one of the things that is necessitating it. How would you just paint a picture of this particular political pressure that is forming the reforms, and of course, how, in your opinion, have you experienced it as a lecturer?
The politicians are just announcing things, and they are not coming to ask us what our experience is.
Right.
The public participation clause in the Constitution mandates that we participate in these conversations. I've never seen any education officer from the Ministry of Education coming to us and asking us, so what do you guys think about what is happening?
Yeah.
So we are never asked. They come with these formulas, which are produced sometimes by the World Bank and the World Education Forum and all those NGOs. And then they come and impose them on us without even asking us, what do these things actually mean? Who is producing them, and what baggage do they come with?
Yes.
And I just want to comment on the vocational training.
True.
Dear Kenyans,
Yeah.
we cannot think like this about vocational training. Look
Yes.
at this picture here, these suits here.
Yeah.
Which of these guys is a plumber? Which plumber has ever made it to become an MP or the president?
Right.
So we need to stop preaching water and drinking wine.
Yeah.
If we value vocational training, we have to pay people and respect them. How many times do we try to negotiate with fundis who are asking us to pay them 200 bob?
Yeah.
And you're already negotiating and saying, that is too much, can I pay you 100? For a job that they did.
Yeah.
Are these people integrated in the economy?
Yeah.
Are they able to get services?
Are there
And
unions even?
Are there even unions who can negotiate for them to be paid better?
Right.
And then even the social services, can they make a living to be able to take their kids to a good school? Can they get healthcare based on a fundi salary? I think we need to be practical. If we are serious about vocational training,
Yes.
let's not talk about TVET, let's talk about salaries.
Okay.
What are we going to pay them?
Yes.
And then honor. Do we honor
Yeah.
people who are good with their hands?
Yeah.
When you go to Europe, the first thing you find when you go through Paris, you're told about who the painters were, who the sculptors were.
Right.
Do we know our artisans by name? Do we have any institutions named after them? We don't honor them.
Yeah.
Even Githeriman, we don't know his name.
Yes.
We only know his nickname. So if we want TVET and vocational training to make sense, we have to honor people in society
Right.
who are very good with their hands, but then also we have to pay them well.
Yeah.
But just saying now go to TVET, don't go to the university, them they are seeing if I go to university I'll be
I'm
talking
better
Kizungu
off,
mingi
yeah.
like Dr. Wandia and I'll be able to drive away, but if I'm a fundi, that cannot happen.
It reminds me of Sonko's lions all over the city. There was an artisan who was doing his best, but we were number one to criticize him. But we don't know what it takes to have that sort of skill. And we demanded better art on our streets, but then we're not a society that actually celebrates said artisans. Now, Dr. Riechi, what do you feel about the political pressure as we wind up this discussion that is being placed on varsities that is necessitating the reforms by the ministry?
I wouldn't want to look at it as from a political angle.
Right.
I said from the beginning that the uncontrolled and quantitative expansion of the university subsector needs to be checked. I'm not saying we need to close down universities. Kenyans,
this is the big
clear.
fear, actually.
We need, and that's why the government should come clear and say what, how, and I like my colleagues' suggestion that they need to work with Kenyans. They need to engage them, all right? But whether we need to reorganize these institutions so that they can focus on areas or programs where they have competitive advantage, that is something that should have been done. And I say the government has realized the folly of initiating many institutions of higher learning, and because of the inadequate funding, all right, and the employability of the graduates, many graduates, and this is evidence. I mean, there was a study by the British Council done by my friends from by Kenyatta University a few years ago on the employability of Kenyan graduates. The study confirmed that about 51% of Kenyan university graduates are not employable. They do not possess employable skills. So what happens is many of these institutions exist, but what happens in the black box where inputs are combined and instruction is done to generate outcomes and outputs is messy. They don't have adequate resources, including well-trained trainers or teachers, the facilities, the equipment which are required. And my friend is complaining that they are required by these professional bodies to buy some unnecessary equipment. It's those equipment that are needed so that when learners are trained using those equipments, they can then be relevant when they go out there. They will be familiar. They will be aware of that and the other technology.
Okay.
So,
now, Okay,
there
so
is need to reorganize them, not to
reorganize-
close them down.
Reorganize things. Now, your friend, Dr. Wendy and Joy, I would like to give you a chance to give you shortly just your remarks, closing remarks as we wind up this conversation.
I just want to say that the problem isn't just with employees.
Yes.
The problem is also with employers. They also have very bad habits. They are not patient. And yet, if you look at CEOs, there's no CEO who gets employed today and knows the work immediately.
Yeah.
They also go through a transition period. So why don't we want to give our young people a transition period to get used to the workplace?
Right.
We cannot make a completely work-ready graduates. It's not possible.
Yes.
Even me with all my training, and I think I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
If I go into a new organization, it takes me a while to acclimatize. And that's the patience we don't want to treat young graduates with.
Yeah.
We should allow them time to acclimatize, to get used to the workplace,
Right.
and stop calling that they're incompetent. They're not
not used.
incompetent.
Yeah.
They're just not used to a new environment, and that's
Yeah.
a human thing.
I feel that
we can,
opinion, yeah.
we cannot train. And if we say that we want completely work-ready graduates, we are going to make education expensive, because all this equipment you see here, which is, I'm sure is quite expensive,
Yes.
we have to bring it to the university.
True.
And that makes
them ready for
university
the job market.
education more expensive. So we need a framework for what you call internships
Yes.
and apprenticeships.
And perhaps the internships should come much earlier.
And they should come much
Yeah.
earlier, so that universities don't have to spend so much money on very expensive equipment. We give them the theoretical and knowledge skills,
Right.
and then maybe after 1 year they go to the workplace, they see what is happening, then they come back.
Okay.
We train them and say, oh, what did you see, like that?
Yes.
So that there's a collaboration, and most of the expensive equipment doesn't have to be bought
Yes.
by the universities, and that way you keep the education costs low.
yeah.
But we cannot have work-ready graduates. It's not possible.
Not practical.
CEOs don't do it, so why do they want it for the young people? Let
Exactly.
them learn. We are always learning.
Dr. Andrew Riechi, your last remarks?
I think it's time, as I said, that we reorganized this university education subsector so that we can minimize or avoid duplication of academic programs, so that graduates are, receive basic competencies, all right, and knowledge to help them move out and eke out a living.
Yeah.
There's no way we can delink university education from the labor market.
Yeah.
And I think I'm quite excited about the prospects
The prospect of these
turning some of the freshly upgraded institutions to universities, making them specialized institutions
Yes.
to do something. And why not even those that were converted
Yeah.
to universities, and where national polytechnics were, like the Kenya Polytechnic.
Yes.
The Kenya Polytechnic was doing an excellent job.
Quite good, yeah.
So I think we need to consider even reverting Mombasa and the Kenya Polytechnics
yeah.
to where they were,
Okay.
so that they continue training those.
Yeah.
My architect
Went to...
holds a diploma from the Kenya Polytechnic and is excellent.
Wow. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And anyway.
Very, very great example right there. That is Dr. Andrew Riechi, Senior Lecturer of Economics of Education, University of Nairobi, and as well as Dr. Wendy Joy, Senior Lecturer and Head of Department, Languages and Performing Arts from Daystar University. Thank you.